Hey everybody, welcome back to Double Al. I'm joined by my co-host, the other Al, and this week we are joined by Ian Howard and Joseph Brucey, also known as our production intern, as special guests. Today's episode is brought to you by I'm having a nice glass of fruit punch mixed in with some nice Pinnacle whipped vodka.
Miller Lite. Was that Joey?
Kefir, stay
Yeah.
healthy.
Poor decisions.
We don't stay healthy here on Double L.
Sadly, once again, we're going to give a shout out to the league champion this year, Devin. So, congrats.
Yeah, congrats, Devin. May the Star Wars shirt forever be retired.
Yeah. Anyways, the point of this episode is we're going to go through everyone's best and worst picks from the fantasy draft. So we can see just how smart we are.
I tried to, or I should say, we tried to take what round they were picked in into consideration for best and worst. So maybe you picked somebody who was really good, but you picked them with your first pick, and then you picked somebody who was like pretty good, maybe a little better than pretty good. You pick somebody who was good, but you picked them with your 11th pick. We'll probably pick the 11th round pick over the first round pick, and then the same goes vice versa for worst pick.
Yep.
Everybody got it? We'll go ahead and start off with Devin here. His best pick from this year's fantasy draft was Michael Pittman Jr. in the 11th round. Pittman had some great games, especially down the stretch when Devin was making that push for that for one of the buys in the playoffs and his playoff push to eventually win the league. Pittman he did a great job for Devin. Like I said, especially down the stretch. It definitely helped propels Devin's team to the championship. And then his worst pick was Kenny Golladay. He picked him in the 5th round. He spent a lot of the year hurt, but also you, the viewer, I know we have quite a few NFL players who view our content, but you, a viewer, not a member of the NFL, had the same amount of touchdowns this year that Kenny Golladay had. So congratulations.
Yeah, and I mean, Michael Pittman being your best pick, I mean, that's great from 11th round, but that really shows how much he traded this year, how strong his trades were. If his best quality pick was Michael Pittman, that means he made some pretty good trades throughout the year to make his team better. Not that Michael Pittman's bad. It's pretty good.
Oh, Devin made some great picks. He had Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, but I think that Pittman's
from a value perspective.
Yeah, from a value perspective, Pittman's performance out of the 11th round was very good.
Certainly.
I believe Pittman only had one bad game where he decided to punch a New England Patriots player and got ejected.
Yeah, I do not. I don't think he should have got ejected for that. I don't know. The officiating in the NFL allows for a lot of roughhousing, you might say. There's punches thrown here and there, and you don't see a lot of ejections unless something pretty serious happens. In that scenario, I don't think it was that serious. I don't think you should have.
Who hasn't wanted to punch a member of the New England Patriots? Let's be real.
Then again, Tom Brady got a 15-yard penalty this last week because he said some mean words.
Yeah, it was kind of funny how he got that penalty after saying to the media a few days before that the refs let him get away with talking a little smack. So maybe the refs heard that and they were like, nope, flag.
All right, let's take a look at my best and worst picks. So Jamar Chase, 7th round, sort of took a risk there with him being a rookie. During preseason, he couldn't even catch a football, so I'm glad he figured out how to do that. He figured it out pretty well, and if I had played him in the finals, I would have won the championship. But hindsight is 2020. Hindsight 2020 also on Raheem Mostert. He got hurt 2 fantasy points into the season, the very first week. I think he might have had like 20 yards rushing, and then he got hurt. So that's actually a picture of him right there, probably tearing his ACL. Absolutely awful.
Another potential candidate for your worst pick was A.J. Brown. Not a great performance from him for you. And then once you traded him, he started playing well. But Raheem Mostert, 2 points on the whole season. That's not great. And, injury is a thing that sucks, but you got to take injury into consideration, as we will see later on.
Oh yeah. Joey,
you want to go through your best and worst pick?
Yeah, and so speaking of injury, some mental health injury with Calvin Ridley. I know he came off a really good season last season, and so I was just thinking that was going to be a solid pick. There wasn't really too many people on the Falcons that were kind of outstanding, so I thought that was going to be nice. And then I knew Matt Stafford coming to the Rams was going to really increase their wide receiver production, and so I just figured Cooper Kupp was going to have some good value. I did not realize he was going to have one of the best wide receiver seasons probably almost ever. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely a shame. You never want to see a professional athlete or anybody really go through anything mental health related. So we're glad that Calvin Ridley took the time off that he needed, but it definitely was a blow to your team for sure.
I don't think Joey holds the same opinion. I think he'd rather Calvin Ridley got him the fantasy points he needed to make it to the Shree-Ram Bowl.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp certainly not going to fall to the 4th round next year. He'll probably be going in the 1st round.
Yeah, he will be going much earlier.
And Calvin Ridley will not be going in the 2nd round. He will be
probably not.
Probably later.
If he gets traded.
Yeah.
Is that an option right now?
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
Dominic Grinnell. He made the playoffs this year. And one of the reasons why is because one of his late round picks was Gronk, who, having a good tight end can really help in fantasy. And Gronk certainly surprised everyone. Last year coming out of retirement and then continuing it this year. It's kind of surprising he fell to the 13th round.
Yeah, I guess, just looking at all the receiving options that Brady had on the Buccaneers, there's just so many that Gronk was, at the beginning of the year, probably looked at as not in the top options for Brady. And he's also not in the top options for getting a USAA membership because he didn't serve and his parents didn't serve. But I keep seeing commercials about it anyway.
He really wants, and he's a millionaire. He really wants to save a few dozens of dollars.
He really wants that USAA membership.
This show is not brought to you by USA, whatever it is, because we're not active members.
We're not active members, and we don't have family that are active members.
What about Robinson, Alan?
Allen Robinson, usually a pretty safe pick. The Bears' offense, not great, but Allen Robinson in past years has been able to still rack up some points. It just didn't really happen that way this year. The Bears' offense, again, was just not great. Justin Fields is still figuring it out at the quarterback position. It was his rookie year. And also, Allen Robinson, during a few points of the season, just looked generally disinterested in playing for the Bears. So, not racking up as many points as we're used to Allen Robinson racking up. Maybe if he can get a change of scenery, his fantasy stock will go way back up.
Agreed.
I can see him going to Miami.
It could happen.
Ian.
Hell yeah. Leonard Fournette.
Can I
go?
Wait a second. Can I just take just a little moment to recognize the fact that that picture is horribly cropped and blurry? Joey, what happened
Joey.
here?
Joey.
So man, we were in a rush. I had to get the job done somehow. I think it gets the job done.
You can't even tell that's him.
Yeah, it's just a couple of eyes, a nose, and a
generic
mouth.
person. All right, back to you, Ian.
All right. Yeah, Fournette. I originally drafted Ronald Jones and Fournette in the hopes that one of them would become like the RB1. and Fournette really just popped off, became a starter every week. And then we have Robbie Anderson. Man, I don't even know why I chose him. Sam Darnold was the quarterback.
Man.
When he popped off for 4 games, Robbie Anderson didn't even get any targets. So he was cut from my team after 4 weeks. Didn't even produce anything after that.
Yeah.
Looking at that pick, the 5th round, reminiscent of last year when you took a quarterback in the first round. You figured it out a little more this year, but
I did.
Yeah.
And I'm
DJ
winning.
Moore took a lot of those targets away from Robbie Anderson.
Yeah, he did.
For Alex's team.
Overall, pretty good draft from Ian.
Yeah, you make the playoffs. It's usually a good draft.
Yeah.
For the whole year, had, I would say, the scariest team. Had a 190-point game at some point, which was absolutely insane.
And then the next week I put up like 80.
That'll happen.
It will happen. All right, we got Ryan, and Ryan is the only instance of anybody that I chose whose best pick was their first round pick, because Jonathan Taylor just was an animal this year.
Beast.
Ryan got him. Yeah, Ryan got him in with the 11th overall pick. So the fact that he was, I consider that a low pick just for the first round, because what he got out of Jonathan Taylor was what propelled him to a playoff spot. And I know he lost in the first round, but he definitely got that playoff spot in large thanks due to Jonathan Taylor. And then his worst pick, it was honestly tough to go through Ryan's team and find like a genuinely bad pick. So I had to give worst pick to Russell Wilson. He got hurt with that finger injury early on. And then after that, he, came back maybe a little too soon. Either his finger wasn't fully healed, or he didn't have his confidence yet, or a combination of both. But he just looked a little out of whack. He had a couple of good games down the stretch, but for the most part, it was just an underwhelming year for Russell Wilson.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions if he came back too early, or in that process of healing, the team lost its chemistry with him not being there. Overall, the Seahawks sort of just fell apart this year and made a little rebound towards the end of the year, but it did not look like the Seahawks that the NFL and the fans of the NFL are used to seeing. And
if Russell Wilson threw the ball to DK Metcalf one more time, Allen probably would have been in the playoffs.
He would have been, yeah.
It would have been, yeah. It's a lot of pain still there from that game. 2.7, baby.
We were joking when that was happening. Hey, Alan, this could be the reason you don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, we were joking. I wish.
Okay, Joey, that's
all right.
Joey, what is that?
I wish it was jokes.
Oh yeah, let me just show
At
you.
the time, it was
That's
just
his championship or his division-winning plaque.
Oh, is
Lovely.
that Fortnite back in the background, Joey?
0.68 points.
Are you playing Fortnite, Joey?
Well, this is a great time to mention that this episode is brought to you by Fortnite.
Oh yeah, huge part.
If you use code DOUBLE, nothing will happen.
In fact, it'll
Yeah,
corrupt your
support a
files.
creator, double L.
Support a creator,
Fortnite.
double L. Nothing's going to happen, but you could write it anyway. All right. Bobby had 2 tight ends as his best and worst pick. His best pick was Pat Freiermuth. Had some really good games. I think he was the top down the stretch, the top scoring tight end once or twice. Had a good stretch of like really good games for the Steelers. He wasn't, Freiermuth was a bit of a boomer bust. He wasn't great every week, but the weeks that he was great, he was like on top of the league as far as tight ends. And worst pick for Bobby was Robert Tonyan. And that's honestly due to a little bit of underachieving earlier in the season, but he also just missed half the year with injury. So that's not what you want to see. And besides that, Bobby had a pretty decent draft. And like looking back at his draft, it's surprising that Bobby missed the playoffs because it was tough to find like a genuinely bad pick for Bobby. So I went with Tunyon, who was hurt for a lot of the year.
And I remember Fryermuth, the first time he was the highest scoring tight end, we had to look up how to pronounce his last name on the show. I'm like, who the heck is this guy? You knew because he went to Penn State, right?
Yeah.
And you're
But I still had to double check the
still had
pronunciation.
to double check. And yeah, one of the reasons Bobby didn't make the playoffs, he lost, I think, 4 games by less than 5 points.
Yeah.
His games were always super close.
And the injury really hurt Bobby. I could have gone with Derrick Henry for worst pick, but those weeks that Derrick Henry was in
Yeah, and Derrick Henry was still leading in rushing yards at 4 weeks after he was injured.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing with Tunyon that I was with Henry. Like, well, he missed like a good portion of the season, but I had to look at the stats that Henry put up, and they were much better than Tunyon's in the time that he was healthy. So I went with Robert Tunyon.
Owen. So we had some debate over what Owen's best pick in this draft was. We have Justin Jefferson, which we ended up going with, who we got in the second round, who really was just one of the best fantasy players this year in general. So it was hard to not choose that as his best pick. And we also had Alexander Madison. We can see a theme here on the Vikings. And that's because while Dalvin Cook was out with injury a lot of this year, Alexander Madison came in and really carried the Vikings running core and just scored a whole lot of fantasy points.
Yeah, the ultimate reason that we went with Justin Jefferson over Madison is because Madison's good stretch was just that. It was really just a stretch, while Justin Jefferson was consistent and very good for Owen all year.
Certainly.
And then, yeah, J.K. Dobbins, just disappointing. He didn't play a single snap this year, right? He got hurt before the season even started. Yeah, so it happened like a couple days after the draft or something. So it was devastating for Owen. J.K. Dobbins probably would have been a good 4th round draft pick, but he got hurt, never played a snap. So you hate to see that with your 4th round pick.
Alan, take us through your picks.
So yeah, my best pick was undoubtedly Deebo Samuel. He was doing it all for the 49ers this year. He was catching, he was running, he was even throwing a little bit. And there's a picture with him with my guy Young Dylan.
Shout out to Young Dylan for being able to interview an NFL player better than most real interviewers.
Yeah, Young Dylan, he brought that energy to the sideline reporting job for Nickelodeon, and I really hope to see him back in that role next year because he did a great job with it. But Deebo Samuel just consistently putting up high 20s, low 30s performances for me, and he won me a couple games that ultimately ended up being meaningless because I missed the playoffs, but at the time they could have meant a lot. And then my worst pick was definitely Julio Jones, 4th round pick. Just not a good year. Even he was hurt for so much of the year, and even when he was healthy, he was not putting up the numbers that you would expect. We didn't even want to put him in a Titans jersey in this because we don't want to remember Julio Jones for the time that he spent on the Titans this year. We just want to, remember that Falcons jersey that he wore because he was he had much better times there. But who knows? Maybe next year he can turn it around, and we'll see what Julio Jones has in store for next year.
I want to say overall pretty good draft, but you didn't make the playoffs, so I don't know.
It was a good draft. Travis Kelce was my 1st round pick, who was not a great 1st round pick. At the time, it was fine. He was the best player available, but the way he performed was definitely not 1st round pick worthy this year. But that's going to happen. You're going to have drafts. Nobody had every single pick go perfectly for them, so you're going to have a few mistakes, and that's why we're doing this list so we can look at everybody's mistakes.
This was a really good example of a mistake going to worst pick for Saquon Barkley, who's just been underperforming fantasy-wise pretty much his whole career.
Yeah, he also spent quite a bit of the year hurt, but
huge downtime due to injury, and then when
Yeah.
he was playing, just not fantastic compared to what he should be playing at.
yeah, it's really a shame that the Giants can't, you know, get themselves an O line because Saquon Barkley could be so much better than he's been performing, but he can't run anywhere. He's just running into defenders. Barkley has been very good on like screen passes and short little dump passes and checkdowns, and he's able to create a lot of space and make good moves. He's very good with the ball in his hand, but when you hand it off to him and it's just a wall of defense, there's not much he can do. So I don't expect Barkley to be in the first round next year or even all that close to the first round next year. And then DeAndre Swift had a very good year for the Lions. Anthony, not a great draft. He didn't finish the season with a whole lot of wins, but he had one bright spot, and that was DeAndre Swift, I would say. I mean, more than one bright spot, but DeAndre Swift was definitely the biggest one and the most surprising, I would say.
Zane's team.
Zane.
Zane's team was cursed by the auto draft. And that showed. I don't think Zane would have taken Christian McCaffrey with his first overall pick if he wasn't drunk in a minor league game. However, he was, so that's who the computer chose for him. And he got injured, I think, week 3, and then played very little afterwards.
Yeah, and he was injured off and on for most of the rest of the year.
On the bright side, Aaron Rodgers ended up being a pretty good quarterback for fantasy after week 1.
I don't know how Aaron Rodgers managed to fall to the 7th round. You think like a lot of quarterbacks, especially the best quarterback. I mean, Mahomes got drafted in the 1st round, but besides that, like the best quarterbacks usually start going in the 3rd, and then a lot of them go 4th, maybe 5th round. So the fact that Rodgers fell to the 7th is surprising. And I know he's getting up there in age. And I think Ian kind of had the same thing happen where Brady fell to him pretty late too, because he was older. But you got to wonder. Aaron Rodgers is arguably one of the better quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, and even though he's getting up there in age, he's not all that old. I mean, he's not super old yet. So the 7th round seems a bit late.
I think it was like the whole deal with like the controversy behind him. And I think that was during our draft, and like people were worried he wasn't even going to play.
That's true. I totally forgot that happened. So I think you're right. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. But Zane took a chance, and it ended up paying off.
Yeah, if you're not in the military, can't get USAA, you can get the Rodgers rate.
That's true. The Rodgers rate. You could get the Patrick price.
Not as good as the Rodgers rate, I hear.
No, experts are still debating on which rate is better, the Rodgers rate or the Patrick price. But here on Double L, we gotta let you in on a little secret. We're pretty sure that the Rodgers rate's a little better. So
would love to have Aaron Rodgers.
100%.
Yeah, if Rodgers and Mahomes would like to come on and debate that next week, we'd love to have them.
It'd be a great video. All right, and then Jeff, Mark Andrews, his 5th round pick, ended up being, I would say, top 3 fantasy tight ends of the year. And Alan, before you said Juju with 2 capital J's, so that's why there's 2 capital J's in Juju.
Oh, Joey, just screwing everything up, man.
My bad, man.
He takes everything too literally. I said 2 capital J's. You'd think that it's pretty obvious that it's J-U, capital J-U. But Joey's like, oh, 2 J's? I guess it's J-J-U, J-U. You gotta, like, what's going on in his head? I really don't know. I think you really just, like, you gotta wonder. I would love to do a brain scan and see what intellectual age he's operating at, because it's definitely not his physical age, that's for sure. It's really disappointing. I feel like any number of his family members could have done just a simple task like this. We've got Nikki in the room. What's up, Nikki? I feel like Nikki could have done this easy. Michaela could have done it easy. Mr. and Mrs. Brucey, even Yogi. his dog Yogi probably would have known that it's JU, and I think if you opened up that head, you would see that he's not operating as a 21-year-old as his body is. Sorry.
No, on that rate, I think we're done with Double L for this week.
We got one new addition down in the right-hand corner. That's the eyes of Cooper Manning. Those are the eyes of somebody who has two brothers who are multiple-time Super Bowl champions, while he is never played in the NFL.
Yeah, we forgot to tell Alan that Joey's face is covering Cooper's eyes.
Oh, maybe you'll see it at some point in the future, but that's what we've got going on is Cooper Manning down there. So, yeah, in the future we'll see that.
All right, Ian, Joey, you got anything else for Double L before we meet again at some point?
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. We will do an impromptu episode if you ever want to come on, Ian.
Hell yeah.
All right, Alan, roll the outro.
All right. Thank you to everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of Double L. We will see you again in the future. Maybe not next week, but in the near future. We will see. You know, we kind of operate under our own schedule here.
You got cut off by the music.